Today I'm going to show you how to use a couple of the 3D functions and tools in Photoshop. So what you're going to want to start out doing is making sure that your workspace is in 3D. Most Photoshop is used with Essentials as your default, and so what you want to do is use this upper right hand corner drop box and go to 3D. As you see, I have kind of changed the colors of this 3D object so that you can easier see the changes in the rolls and the rotations of the object so that you can see the sides that we're at. So the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to work directly with the object and rotating it and rolling it and etc. So what we want to do is make sure that in your 3D or layers, make sure that your pyramid is checked. And if you see up here, these are the functions that we're going to be using with. The first one being rotate the object. After that, we're going to use roll, drag, slide, and scale. So with rotating the object, basically you're just going to click outside of this pyramid. You don't want to click in here because then we'll get to those functions in a little bit. So you're just dragging out here and you're rotating it, and you can see how your object moves with each click and drag. So as you can play around with this, and it can kind of go any direction that you want as you have it clicked. The second function we're going to do is we're going to roll the object. This is literally exactly like it sounds. It's taking the point in the center and you're rolling it. And you can roll it each direction. And as you see, the direction that you are dragging it is the opposite that the object will be going. So the bottom is going to go up when you go to the right, and the bottom is going to go up when you go to the left, as you see. The next one you have is drag. Drag is where you're dragging, The next one you have is drag, and drag is when you're moving the object anywhere around the screen, up and down. You can go even through the plane of the ground, and up and over and side to side. Slide is very similar to that, but with slide you're also as you come in, it's making the object appear bigger, whereas in drag it was not. It was just moving it up and down this plane. So with slide you're also moving, you can move it out through that x-axis. And for your fifth one is scale, and that's just making the object smaller or bigger. And as you see, as you drag the mouse towards you, it makes it smaller, and as you're dragging the mouse away from you, it's going to make it bigger. The next modes that we're going to do is actually change the camera. So what you do is you click on the outside and you see this yellow-green line appear around your box, and that means that you are now in the camera modes versus the object modes. So you have orbit the camera, roll the camera, pan the camera, slide the camera, and zoom. So we're going to start with orbit, and this is basically very similar to rotate, but instead of rotating the object, you're rotating your view of the object. And so you can go underneath, you can go side to side and around, and it brings you upside down if you go around that way. So this is, instead of moving the object and moving it around, you're just moving your view. The second one you're going to do is roll the camera, and that's literally exactly what it sounds like. You're rolling the camera. So you can go upside down for a view, and you're just going back and forth, and you're leaving your object there, and you're just moving your point of view, which is what happens with all of these different camera modes. For the third one, you're panning the camera. This is very commonly used in most movies that you're going to have, that it's going to have a scene where it's going to move something in and out. Any skyline type of a thing is really commonly used. But as you see, you're just moving up, down, side to side. The object is not moving. Nothing is changing size. Nothing is doing anything, but you're just moving that object in or out of your view. I'm actually going to skip and go to zoom because it'll make slide a lot easier to understand. Zoom is where you're zooming in and out of that object. The object isn't changing size at all. As you can see here, the object doesn't change size when you go in and out. It still remains those dimensions, but you're just zooming in your camera. So it's basically like a digital camera when you hit the zoom button, and the object's not changing size, it's just changing your viewpoint, that it's closer. It seems closer to you or further away. So if we go back to slide is easiest to explain is that it kind of combines pan and zoom in itself. So you can still move side to side, but you can also move in and out and side to side. The dimensions still don't change, just like zoom, but it does change the viewpoint where you don't have to just pan in and out or just zoom. It kind of does it both for you. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to actually rotate with the axes on the object. So I'm actually going to try and change this a little bit so you can see a little bit better. You can do it a couple different ways. You can move it on the outside box, the bounding box, or you can move it through this interior, which I prefer to do. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to scale, and you can scale uniformly with this box in the middle, or you can scale along each of the axes. So you can make it taller or shorter through the y-axis. You can make it narrow or wider through the x-axis, and you can also make it with more depth or less depth, more shallow. The second thing that you can do with the object itself is you can rotate it around any of the axes. So if you're going to want to rotate it around the y-axis, it's just spinning the object. It's basically, there's an invisible line through the middle of the object, and it's spinning it on that. Just so that you can see different sides and stuff like that. If you're rotating around the x-axis, it's the exact same, or it's the exact opposite, and you are taking through the middle and you're not moving it along the x-axis, you're just rotating it from there. And then finally, the third one is you're rotating around that z-axis, and that's very similar to the x-axis, but instead of like left to right, it's coming out towards you like the z-axis does. And for the last set of 3 that you can do is you can move along each axis. So move it up and down through the y, move it left to right with the x, and move it in and out on the z. So after you've messed with all of these and scaled them different sizes and everything, but you wanted to go back to what you originally had it, you're going to click this little up here in your properties. Most of it's going to be in your mesh at first, and you're going to switch it over to your coordinates. So here you can switch any inches, you can change the position of your object, and it'll show you different ways and different places of your object, but you can also reset your coordinates. That makes it back to what it originally was. I'm going to scale it down a little bit still, and it resets everything to the standard. And from here you can also move it to the ground. The ground is this invisible line that you saw it go through. As you can see it going through if you reset the coordinates again. But for me, for my purposes, I prefer to have it on the ground, and that's just basically like having it on the flat surface of this invisible table. So I know that you can go through it, but I like to view it as a table that you can go in and out of. These are some of the easiest functions to use when you're trying to maneuver with a 3D object. Thank you for watching.